Welcome to Here's the Story, a show that brings student affairs to life by sharing the authentic voices and lived experiences of those who are shaping the field every day. I'm your host, Dr. Neil E. Galimo. I am the luckiest guy I know. I'm blessed to serve as the director of campus living and learning here on Texas A&M's sunny Galveston campus. I'm a father, a husband, and a son, and I'm over here just trying to do my best or get caught trying. I'm here with my co-host.
Hey Neil, JT Snipes. My pronouns are he, him, his, and apparently that was hilarious to you. I don't know what's going on, but I serve as associate professor and chair of educational leadership at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. And I'm just trying my best to live as a free black man in a world that would have me live otherwise.
We need to thank today's sponsor, Huron. Huron's education and research experts help institutions transform their strategy, operations, technology, and culture to foster innovation, financial health, and student success. So, JT, I am super excited to welcome. It's weird. I think we've become friends over time, but I will tell you.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you, a very young professional, way back in the day, around 2011. Um,
Wait, who
I
was young in 2011?
I was younger. It was me, yes,
Oh, you
and
were the young professional. Okay,
yeah. So,
thank you.
so after that dear colleague letter from the Department of Education, everybody was scrambling to learn how to to take Title IX seriously. And I remember thinking, this is ridiculous. I am a housing coordinator. Like, what am I doing here? And this should be the police's job, or this should be somebody else's job. And and then I went to this training and with Scott Lewis here, and it kind of changed everything for me. And honestly, it's changed the trajectory of my life in a lot of ways, including my research interests and just my passions and how I show up for this work. So Scott Lewis is here. He's the
Oh,
managing, he's the managing partner of TNG, but he's also been doing the student affairs thing forever. Uh, 30 years, right? Is
Over.
that right?
Yeah. Tragically over 30. Yeah.
Who's counting? And so, I have a hard time imagining anybody spending time with Scott Lewis and not being better for it. So, Scott, what's up? You want to
Hey,
tell us your story?
for sure. For sure. Thanks. And thank you all for inviting me to be a part of this. Um, when we were kind of going through and first having this conversation about, what story to tell, you can't spend 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years in student affairs or as the faculty member and not have stories. You got them, and you always want to say, the working title of your book is "You're Not Going to Believe This." Like that's that's every student affairs, and particularly Neil, if you're in housing, like because there's just the
Heard.
stuff that happens is unbelievable. But when I was looking back and kind of processing and then you and I processed it a little bit, kind of landed on one that was pretty profound. Still has impacts me to this day, and has uh, a lot of lessons inside of it. And the story happened when as you know, I'm one of the co-founders of NABITA, National Association of Behavior Intervention and Threat Assessment, and so BITs were very young at the time, as we know them today. When this happened, and obviously a lot more interest after the tragedy at Virginia Tech happened in higher ed. And so we had a situation on our campus, and it was this young man, and he had gone to take an exam. And I've written about this story, but not in much detail as I'm probably going to talk about today. He'd gone to take an exam. He was a senior, and he went into the classroom and he sat down and he wrote. And it's a class where apparently this happens. Think you're really hard, high level like engineering science classes, and he just wrote something across the top of the paper and went in the front of the room, handed it, put it down on the table, and just walked out. Like 5 minutes into the exam. Now, I've learned later from the people that teach these classes that sometimes that happens. Sometimes students are just like, well, studied all the wrong stuff. Well, abandoned ship. And so they weren't as taken aback by that as what they were taken aback by is what he wrote across the top of the paper. And what he wrote across the top of the paper was, if I kill them and myself, will they stop following me? And that's all he wrote. And then he just walked out of the room. So one of the proctors took a look at it and thought, this kid's just messing with us. What a jokester. The other one took a look at it and was like, we should probably tell somebody about this. And so they walked down the hall to one of the associate deans and showed the associate dean what was turned in. And the associate dean was like, let's just assume this is serious. And we did a pretty good job of marketing our bit. And so he called me and was like, hey, I've got this thing. And I was like, all right, let me get a copy of it. And we got the police involved. And we called our bit together. Like, and it was me, the director of the counseling center, and the chief of police. And we're kind of having this conversation about, hey, let's find this kid. Let's find out everything we can find out about him. All the things bits are supposed to do, right?
Right.
But again, this is early on in the time. And while we're doing it, my admin for the office, I was effectively, the title was not important, but I was effectively the dean of students. So I had a lot of behavioral things in my office. And my admin comes in, he goes, hey, I think you want to take this call. And I was like, hey, I'm kind of in the middle of something. And he's like, no, I think you want to take this call. And I was like, all right. So I pick up the phone, and on the phone is a guy several hours away who works at a high school, and he's calling. He's like, hey, I'm on the phone on another line with this kid, and he is in a bad place, and he's one of your students. And I was like, all right, well, great. 2 cases at once. Like, this is phenomenal. And I was like, well, we're kind of in the middle of something. Like, we got this kid, and he like is, what's your kid's name? And he tells me the name, and I'm like, holy crap, it's the same kid.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, he's in a bad place, and I think I know where he is, but we're not sure. Meanwhile, we got guys like cops on the way to his house, where he is not. And honestly, by luck and crook and what this guy did and saving this kid's life, we figured out where he was, and he was basically holed up in an apartment off campus with this girl that he met a few days before. And so we figured out, and we having this conversation, and we decided, hey, this is crisis response. So law enforcement, you're in charge. Like, what do you need me to do? And the guy on the phone back from the high school goes, hey, when he told me that what's going on, he goes, I went to your website, and I was like, student in crisis, and your bit came up. And so he's like, can you come get me? Can you come get me? And I'm like, I can't get there, man. But there's this guy I know that you can trust, and his name is Scott Lewis. And I was like, why me? Like, what? Dude. Like, and he goes, well, it says you're the chair of this thing. So I figured like you're the important one, right? And I was like, sure. So long story bearable, we decide, hey, should we like, does he have access to guns? The answer is yes. And he's like, he's telling about this drug deal that went wrong, and he thinks he might have murdered somebody. And I'm like, whoa, 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 hang on now. And so we're trying to make this determination. And what we decided was we were going to go to the apartment where we knew he was holed up, and we were going to take law enforcement with us. And there was a discussion, and I need to point this out to folks that might be listening, particularly deans and students. There was a discussion about whether we should send somebody in from law enforcement and say it's me, and that guy was basically try to take this guy down, or should we go in shock and awe, bang down the door, flashbangs the whole bit, and just take him out, not murder him, but take him down.
Right.
And so the answer was, hey, why don't we see if we can talk to him? And then our psych was like, hey, if this guy sounds like he's in the middle of a psychotic break, this is delusional, you can't send somebody in that says they're you, because the minute he figures out it's a lie, it's going to go badly. And so I was like, all right, well, I'll tell you what, I'll go in. And now this is the part where I want to tell everybody, in the intro, we didn't give a lot about like my whole background, but one of the things you should probably know that not most deans of students don't have. Like, first of all, if you're a dean of students, you shouldn't be doing this. But I happen to be able to go through a lot of law enforcement training, including hostage negotiation and interrogation and interview skills. So it's something I'm familiar with, and I felt comfortable enough going in, and the law enforcement felt comfortable enough with me going in. But his delusion was that the government was following him because of this drug deal that had gone wrong that turns out didn't actually happen. And so our chief of police says, we're going to send a car over. We're going to take you over. We're going to send a hostage negotiator with you. We're going to send a couple of snipers. We're doing this. And so he sends the car over, and I look out my window, and they're pulling up to get me. And the car they send, black SUV. I'm like, did you not hear what his delusion is? Is that the government's following him? You don't think the black tinted SUV is not going to be bad? And he's like, no, it'll be fine. So we drive over there. We get over to the apartment, and we knock on the door, and this woman answers the door, this young woman. And the funny part when we're knocking on the door is that I got an FBI negotiator with me, one of our CBI FBI guys, and I was like, he's got like the vest on. I go, hey, should I need one of those? He's like, no, you'll be all right. And then he knocks and he like steps to the side. And I was like, I should probably step to the side too. And then this woman opens the door. She's clearly one of our students. And she says, oh, are you here for him? And she names him. And I'm like, yeah, actually we are. And she's like, yeah, I was wondering when somebody might show up. He's been up here for a couple days. He's been like journaling like crazy. And he just says all these crazy names. But she's like, but he's in my bedroom. And I was like, what's he doing? She's like, he's asleep. And the agent that's with me goes, hey, is there anybody else in the apartment? She says, yeah, my roommate. He's like, I need you to go get her and get out of the apartment. This is the weirdest thing that happened, you guys. The
This is the
roommate
weirdest thing.
comes. She's clearly just gotten out of the shower. She got like sweatshirt and like shorts on, and she's hair's all wet. And the agent goes, hey, you need to leave. You both need to get out of here right now. And the roommate goes, why do I have to leave? And I was like, because this guy with the gun and the badge just told you should probably leave for your own
Yeah.
safety. Like,
Yeah.
because you're weirded out by this guy too. There was a small part of me, this isn't very nice, everybody, if you're listening in, but there's part of me that was like, yes, I guess if she wants to stay in, whatever, assumption of risk, you did it.
The guy with
So,
the vest, with
yeah,
the bulletproof
exactly.
vest
So she
says,
gets
leave.
out. We go in. We try to establish if she has a gun in the room or not. And we go in, and which the agent's with me. He says, "Hey Scott, like what we decided I was going to knock on the door because she said he was asleep. I'm going to wake him up, but he's expecting me. That's important to the story. Like we're not surprising him." And she says, he's like, "Hey Scott, if the pucker factor gets too tight, he's like, I'm going to scream your name as loud as I can, and you need to drop to the floor." And I'll never forget him this quote. He goes, "Because the body count today is 1 or 0,
Whoa.
no in betweens." And I said to him, I was like, "Man, I feel sorry for you." And he goes, "Why do you feel sorry for me?" And I go, "Because you might have to kill somebody today. Like that's a lot." And he says, "I feel sorry for you. You're the one going in there." And I was like, "All right, fair." So we had a little moment, knocked on the door, went in the room. He was kind of groggy waking up, and we sat down. And I sat down on the chair by the bed. He sat on the bed. He was kind of a wiry kid in really good shape. He had a big giant ring on his finger, and I was like, "Hey, well, what's that ring from?" Well, first, actually, he's like, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "I'm Scott Lewis." And he's like, "Oh, you're the man." And I was like, "Well,
Man.
that leaves. We'll figure that out later." But yeah, I guess for these purposes, I am the man. And then he says, "Can I see your ID?" And I was thinking back to what our psychologist said. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, this is when it would have gone south. And so I showed him my ID, and he goes, "All right, so you know everything that happened." And I was like, and he goes, "And you can make things right?" And I was like, "Well, let's talk about that. What happened?" And it was weird, guys, because he would have like this clearly delusion that he's in, and then he would go out and come into saliency and come back and forth. And then he wanted to go out and smoke a cigarette. We had 2 snipers set up outside. Like it was tense in there, but we kind of bonded in there. And then he asked if he could go outside and smoke a cigarette. And I was like, "Sure." We go out on the balcony. I said, "You need to know there's a cop in the other room." And he's like, "Why is there a cop here?" And I was like, "Because I'm the man. I don't know you." And the other fun thing that happened, I forgot this part. When I asked him about the ring, I was like, "What's that ring for?" He goes, "It was a champion wrestler." And I was like, "Oh, good. So if this gets down to close quarter combat, not only is he half my age, but I'm screwed." Like, so we go out. He meets the agent out there. They have a nice moment. It's like he actually goes, "He gonna shoot me?" And I said, "Only if you do something wrong. You don't do anything. Just let's go out and smoke a cigarette." He's like, "All right." So we go out. They have a tense meeting. He goes to smoke a cigarette. We're out there for about another hour and a half, 2 hours. This whole thing took 6.5 hours.
Whoa.
That's how long we were in there. And then I finally got him to volunteer to go to the hospital. And he said, "I'll only go if you'll ride with me." And I was like, "Sure." This is the part, guys, that gets to me still this day. So, and he's like, "I don't want to go in an ambulance." And I was like, "Well, plan B is a black SUV." And he's like, "We'll do the ambulance." I was like, "All right." All right. So we go out and we're sitting on the curb. He's just wearing a gym shorts and tennis shoes. Like he doesn't even have a shirt on. And we're sitting out on the curb waiting for the ambulance to come. And he looks at me and he goes, "There's something really wrong with me, isn't there?" I was like, "Man, there's something wrong with all of us." And then he did the part that really just got me. This kid, I'm 5'9", he's about my height. He literally crawled into my lap, into like a baby, put his arms around me, and he's like, "What's wrong with me?" And I was like, "I don't know, man. It's just tough." So we got to the hospital, finally tracked down his mom. and his brother. They were able to come up, get him voluntary hospitalization for he had a psychotic break. Uh, the happy ending to the story is that he had inpatient obviously for a while, got out of the hospital, recovered. He ended up going somewhere else to finish school, and now he is. Last time I checked on him, he was still teaching and coaching, but living every day. If you know how psychotic breaks work, living every day fighting off that delusion, like every single day of his life. And so when we were processing this afterward, it was kind of like the two funny parts that happened. Well, one not funny, one funny. We were processing it afterward, and we are like, "Hey, was this a success for a bit?" And I was like, "Man, we got there too late." Like the whole point of having an intervention team is to get there early, early, early. And in our after action report, like we're trying to figure out like when does it start and how could we have known? What could we have known? There was a lot of things we couldn't have known. I think we did as good as we could have done. But afterward, I was asking the guy, the hostage negotiation guy, I was like, "So, how'd I do?" And he said, "It's sort of outcome determinative." And I go, "What?" And he goes, "Nobody got hurt. Nobody died. He went to the hospital. You did good." And I was like, "Wait, that's how we grade it?" Like I want to know how I did in there. And he goes, "You didn't lie to him. You built a bond. He trusted you enough to meet me, and we got him where he needed to be. So it's a success. It's a win." He's like, "So take the W." And that's what happened.
Wow. Uh,
Questions?
yeah. I mean, so how could you have ever left that that life? Wow. I did not think that I was going to hear a story about the FBI like that, but I think I just have to say, like, it's really, really hard to question the importance of what we do when, like, we hear stories like that. I don't I don't know. So how how has this affected how you continued on? Like, what do you do after that?
um, there was a lot of processing. It was super emotional with family at the hospital. Uh, there was a lot of like thinking back, and it did end well, but I still think back and go, should I have gone in there? Like, was that the right move? I had just, had a wife, had a young baby that we called on the way.
Yeah.
That's another funny thing. It's kind of funny. Like we're on the way, and all the officers, the two guys in the car in the back that were friends of mine, and the guy that I was just meeting from the bureau, they're all like calling their families, like, "Hey, we're on this way. It's a very serious situation, an active shooter, blah blah." And I was like, "Oh, I should probably call Kim." And so I was like, "Hey, honey, I'm not gonna make it to the birthday lunch today. We got this situation. It's pretty serious." And I was like, "But the present is on my desk. So if you were by my office and grabbed that, that'd be great." And she's like, "Okay." She's like, "Well, who's with you?" And I told her the officers that are with her that she knew as well. And then later on, I was like, when I hung up, like the guy, the guy driving, he's like, "She took that really well." And I was like, "You know what? She did take that really well. Like almost too casually. Like, should I be worried about anything?" So when I asked her later, I was like, "Hey, the gravity of it. One, she didn't like fully wrap her head around it. But two, like she said something really cool, and I think it goes to the relationships that we have with our, the folks that we work with every single day, and all those other departments, and these two officers were both there." And she called him my name, and again, I'm trying to make sure everybody stays innocent here. But she called him my name, and she goes, "I know they would never let anything happen to you." Just kind of a cool level of trust we had built there. We knew them, and and Neil, you and I've talked about this, and JT, my wife's background is victim advocacy, and sometimes law enforcement and victim advocacy don't have the nicest relationship. That's not what we had. And I'm doing Title IX investigations, and that can be a tense relationship. That's not what we
Yeah.
had. It was just people trusting people to do the right thing all the time. And that actually that event has made me really commit to bit even more
Yeah.
and trying to find these kids that are struggling at the very, very beginning, whether it's they're being told they have less worth, or
Mhm.
they're, you think about what's happening today. The CDC data, the Trevor Project data, Jed Foundation data is very clear that these kids are being harmed. And so it's so important that that bit connect them and get them early. And, I've been saying to all the coaches and athletics folks and club sports and clubs and orgs, every time I finish a presentation with them, I say, I'm not pandering to you. The data is clear. Their suicidality and self injury drops when they feel like they're a part of something. And it goes up when they feel like they're excluded or outcast or have less worth. So the work we do in student affairs right now is literally saving lives. Literally. Every single day. More than we did before.
And what a powerful story. I asked this question to all of our guests, and I'm curious, what made you want to tell this story now?
I've told it before in in like teaching capacities, and like, how do you get more information? How do you market and things like that? I think when I was processing it with Neil ahead of time, he's like, think of some stories, and then we went over like two or three options, and I had a couple. There's some that are like feel good, uh, and they still make me feel good. Like, kids getting into law school who were in trouble at one time, and they come from a really troubled background. We got them on the right track, that kind of thing. This is the one that to this day still like
Yeah.
chokes me up. Like, it just it's like, I mean, I don't, I try not to like choke up too much at the end, but it just gets me. That could have been
Scott,
like, that could be my kid, you know?
right. Right. It's Scott, I think listening to this story, I'm not gonna lie, like there's so many things where like I would not have done that. I would not have done that.
Me too.
I absolutely would never have let anybody do that. And so, and you're in the business of consulting, right? So like,
Oh,
what what would you take from, like, what would you want people to take from this? Like, what is the essence of
if I
what I
were as a risk manager and legal consultant to schools everywhere, if my client came and said, "Hey, we're sending our AVP dean of students into a hostage situation with an active shooter," I'd be like, "No, you're not." Like, no, you're not. It speaks to, I think, a little bit of dumb young arrogance
Yeah.
on my part. Uh, that confidence that the folks, because the two other people that I talked to, the chief and our counselor, were both far more experienced than me, and the faith they had in me, and the faith I had in the people to protect me. But I think why it happened the way it did, Neil, is we had to move in the moment.
Yeah.
We didn't have time to call the VP and the risk manager and the general counsel and go, "Hey, we're thinking about this. What do you think?" Because we're like, this guy is out there, and we got to move quick. And I think it also speaks to the compassion that our law enforcement had, that not, that certainly you see in the news, not doesn't always exist. That they did not want to go shock and awe. They did not want to hurt this kid. They didn't want something to go bad. And if there's a way to not have that happen, then let's do it. And we got this brash dude who we know at least is moderately trained in this space to go in, like, and he's willing to do it. But there's a lot of protections in place, and uh, I I would not advise people to do this. Um, and I think the policing that's happening now in the places that are doing policing right with social work and mental health professionals, I mean, this is what they're designed to do now in these situations, so that we can make not as many bad things happen.
Mm.
And we need more of that right now, actually, than any other time.
I mean, it feels
Yeah.
like you kind of had to bet on the goodness of the person or their ability. Like, I don't know. I don't, I feel like that's not something you can take for granted. I think there's a lot of folks who, feeling threatened versus being threatened. And I feel like there's just a lot of I don't blame anybody who assumes the worst, like assumes that once you hear delusion and crazy, you know. So I don't know. I really admire that. I hope to do that if I'm ever in a situation anywhere near this.
Yeah, I mean, folks that are having a break like that, it's really about relatability. I mean, they're just living in like an alternate space, and you got to go there with them, and not be like you're crazy, like that didn't happen. Like, there's not a time to question. You got to get in there with them. From the Atixa training stuff, like it's a lot like being a good investigator and bonding with somebody really close and getting them to trust you in that moment. And, the more trust they have and more faith they have in you and your competence, the less likely they are to be agitated or act out or lash out. And so that first 6 minutes is so important in that space. Like, if you don't have it, it's going to go poorly. I'm sorry, JT. I think I cut you off there for a second.
Oh no, you didn't. I've just been thinking about the presumption of safety in so many ways. Like I think I go through my day not thinking, am I safe? I'm not in a process of threat assessment. Um, and I'm also trying to take responsibility for the care of my community.
Yeah.
So I think there is something really powerful about making the right decision, even when it doesn't follow protocol exactly, right? Because I imagine if you were the president of the university or even a part of the board, if it had gone the wrong way, right? Like there'd be
Right.
a whole bunch of questions. Um, and I don't know. So I'm not a university president. I ain't got to think about that, luckily, right? But there's something really attractive to me about knowing what's right and doing it in the moment, right? Like being prepared to do what's right. Um, and I imagine now you may do it differently, but I'm just grappling with that. Like how should we act and when should we act? I think is really, really powerful and really important.
Yeah, I think I don't know if I would honestly do it differently today. I think now I've got so much more experience of working with people who have had these, they're in the break or they're just in a really bad place. Now I've done more of it, not as dramatically as that one where we thought this guy could have a gun in a backpack right there and this could go bad really fast.
Yeah.
Um, but I probably would do the same thing. I don't think that I would coach me back then to do the same thing. I think I would have been like, well, maybe we just go in and like, can we like just tear gas or something? Don't hurt him, but let's like, uh, but now there's also more people in the space as
Yeah.
particularly the care teams have evolved. We have more people that have been trained in the space, people that we've trained in de-escalation, and how to do those things. And it's just so important to, you know, what is safe, right? You know,
Mm.
what does safe really mean? You started the introduction, trying to make it through you're trying to make it through as a black man in a world where there's data that tells us, you know, the safety is a real consideration. And, I feel like it's our job that anytime we can make people feel more included, more protected, and safer, we should take advantage of that.
Uh,
One thing I noticed that really just kind of hit me like is a through line, I think, for all my dealings with you and something I really admire about you. And I think, my core value is honestly, it is authenticity. I can deal with a lot of sins, as long as you're honest. And my dad used to say, like, don't piss on my head and tell me it's raining, right?
Right.
And as long as you're not doing that, but I feel like that is one thing I always hear from you is just just respect them enough to tell them the truth. And, you know, if you're telling the truth, you can't get caught in a lie. And I think that's what draws a lot of people to you, for what it's worth.
Sorry, JT.
What's that?
Oh no, I was just gonna say I think it's really important for us to take that risk in building a tighter community. Um, and I can't help but see your MLK quote, right? Like there's I think fear invites darkness and invites solitary, um, is the antithesis of community. It drives us away from each other. But your story reminds me the power of light, right? And taking a risk, to bring more light into the world. So it's really powerful. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Wow. Well, Scott, thank you so much.
I appreciate you guys asking me to be a part. Been a while since that one came up. So
we're thanking you, and now we're going to thank our sponsor, Huron Collaborates. Come on. Huron
Sorry, that was
collaborates with
great.
colleges and universities to create sound strategies, optimize operations, and accelerate digital transformation. By embracing diverse perspectives, encouraging new ideas, and challenging the status quo, Huron promotes institutional resilience in higher education. For more information, please visit go.hcg.com/now. Best transition ever. All right.
That was actually a good
it's
transition.
smooth. You did it.
I'm just a hater though. And
Gotcha.
I want to say to our sponsors, I'm not booing you. I was booing the transition. We love you, Huron.
You know what? I love you more now than I did before. All right. This has been Here's the Story, part of the Student Affairs Now family. We are so glad you joined us to laugh, cry, learn, sometimes commiserate, but always celebrate being a part of the Student Affairs experience. If you have a story, and we all have a story, please consider sharing by leaving a 2-minute pitch via voice file at studentaffairsnow.com/here's the story. Every story is welcome, and every earnest perspective is worthy. And even if you don't feel like sharing yours, you can still find ours and others at studentaffairsnow.com, on YouTube, and anywhere you listen to podcasts. This episode has been edited by Nat Ambrosi. Thank you, Nat, for making us sound better than we have any business sounding. Everybody, we hope this fed your flame a little bit, because your light matters. Keep using it to make the world a brighter place. Until next time, this has been Here's the Story.